Ayodele Casel, and this is the Legacy series with the Black Artists Dance Collective. I first fell in love with tap dancing. Well, I was first curious about it when I saw Fred and Ginger in a movie in my senior year in high school, and I really was just so intrigued by how they were moving and what they were doing. And I would go home and I would rent their movies and I try to do what they were doing to varying degrees of success. Actually, probably no success at all because I had no training whatsoever. When I fell in love with it was my sophomore year in college. I was at Tisch School of the Arts, an acting major, and we were offered Tai Chi or tap as a movement course. That's what we were, and I was like, oh my God, I could finally take a tap class. And so I signed up for the tap course and I loved it. I was flat, peel, flat, ball chain, flat, peel, doing all of the basic things and just really kind of loving it so much. And then about a year into that, I met a dancer named Bakari Wilder, who was a freshman at the time that I was a sophomore. And he was actually he was a real hoofer, a real tap dancer, and he and I got to dance together. And when I say dance together, I mean he became my mentor. He said, hey, tap dancing is not just choreography, it's not just steps. It's actually, really rooted in a deep history and legacy of Black people, and it's about expression and communication. And actually, you don't really need somebody to tell you what to do because the expression comes from yourself. And when I understood that, I just that intrigued me, and I was really inspired and interested in that because I had always I had struggled with language. When I was 9, I moved to Puerto Rico and I didn't speak Spanish, and I remember as a young person feeling stuck in my ability to communicate verbally. And then I moved back to New York. I was 15 and my English was out of practice, and so I kind of always found myself in these start stop as it relates to communication and verbal communication. So when I found something that was oh wait, I can just channel my thoughts and my focus and my feelings into rhythm, and to do that, right, and to feel that, and it felt good. And not only that, but that I felt like I was able to communicate with other people. That just kind of I knew that I was going to be a student of this and a practitioner for life of tap dance. One of the things that is really deeply embedded in the tap culture is education, right? So knowing where it come from, who were the progenitors of the form. And so I've always, we always knew to search for and to listen to and to watch the people who had, innovated it and who were masterful at it, such as John Bubbles and Bill Robinson and, the Nicholas brothers and Gregory Hines and Sammy Davis Jr. and, Jimmy Slide. And for me, the beautiful thing about the time period that I started dancing is that it was in the 90s where there was a resurgence and a focus on young people tap dancing. Bringing the Noise, Bringing the Funk had just opened at the Public Theater, and tap dancing was being, really revolutionized. And not only was that happening so that I could finally see myself, somebody who looked like me, on stage, young, of color. That was really inspiring at the time when, diversity and inclusion wasn't really something that was on the tips of people's tongues. People weren't talking about, oh, how do we, make space for this, brown girl or this, Black person. It's that just was not something that people were talking about. So to see all of those young men of color, those Black young men on stage, be so expressive and be so authentic and really raw and talented, I was man, yeah, that, I want to do that. Let me get to that. And that was really formative, right? To understand that though we may have been learning something or practicing something, that we were anchored and rooted into something that preceded us, and that was really strong. We had a strong foundation. Tap dancing used to be back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, when at the height of the silver screen, everyone was tap dancing. Every actor knew how to act, sing, and move, but they specifically knew how to tap. And then it kind of lulled again for a really long time. I would say the majority of, the year 2000 to the year, probably it's just now picking up steam again. I was really disappointed when, when dance in general started becoming commercialized, with the advent of TV dance series. And then also they were specifically excluding tap dancing. And that was really hard to watch because, it says something. It says something to people who might not know anything about it, like, oh, that tap dancing is not as important. That was really something that I was not really into. When I think about it now, like, I wish tap dancing was more prevalent commercially, like, literally in commercials. Like, I feel like we should be everywhere. But I would say, like, when I also think about commercial, I think about dance, like concert dance, and how concert dance excluded tap dancing as well. And specifically, and then when it started including tap dancing, it was actually mostly white artists. And this is not to say that, that white artists can't participate in the form. I mean, they always have, and that is, tap is for everyone. However, it was really concerning to me that people of color, that Black people in particular, who are like, especially contemporary people, like people who are, there's so many talented folks, and nobody was kind of checking for them. And that was really upsetting, And so I started speaking out about that, like, to those people and to those institutions and to those presenters, and saying, like, something is really wrong when we are not honoring the roots and the legacy, and we're not honoring the representation. The representation is very unequal at this moment. Yeah, I love a Broadway Foundation. I actually my relationship with them began as a tap teacher. I was just, or movement and a percussive sort of, instructor for their summer camp. And I was so, it felt like home to be with those young women. So we work with young women ages, they're going into like the 6th grade from 5th grade. So like they're like 10 years old or so. And we see them until they're with us until like they're about 17 or 18. And actually beyond, because once they go out into the real world, we kind of still have our hands on them in a way. We keep an eye and see what they're doing and how they're, what their interests are and how we can still support their vision for themselves, even as they leave the program. And then I've sort of just, and then in the last 2 years, I was asked to be the director of the graduate programs, which I actually am now co-director with Sydney Morton, who is a wonderful, actor, singer, dancer, human being extraordinaire, and she's a wonderful partner in this. I wanted to spend more time with young people who had my experience. And my experience growing up was, I did not grow up in a dance studio. I didn't even know that was really an option. And even if it wasn't something that my mom had the budget for. And not that this is solely an economic issue, but to me, it's an investment issue. It's an investment of time. So I wanted to work with and be around young people who looked like me and who had my experience. And so a Broadway kind of like really spoke to my heart in that way. And it is really fulfilling, because I remember being 15 and like wanting to be an actor and like going like, how am I going to make this happen? And finding there was a place called Mind Builders Creative Arts Center that actually still exists, and they had an after school program. They had a youth performance company, and I saw my friend saw them in the paper and said, there's auditions, and going to auditions was like, ooh, I'm like, you just felt like you were already a professional just because you had to go to an audition. And so and I auditioned for the youth company, and I got in, and I was really mentored and supported in my dream. And at that time, it was just a dream to be a performer, and so I always talk about Melveda Hughes and Hilda Willis and Safus Henderson and these people who were really there to like, just guide us along in our interests. And that's how I also feel about, ABW. I'm like, how can I use my experience, the contacts that I've developed over time, and to support these young people who aren't necessarily trying to be performers. These are young people who are interested in all kinds of things. But the camp and the program is a leadership. It's a leadership camp through the arts. Like, we teach art, leadership through the arts, and I love it. I love it a lot. One of the things that I would love to see grow and develop is actually other dance forms appreciate tap dancing. And what I mean by that is that, you know, we spoke a little bit earlier about how institutions and, you know, concert dance or commercial, the commercial scene has tended to like ostracize or just like marginalize tap dancing. But I often feel like that happens within our own community, like with our own community of Black dancers who are very connected to ballet and modern and contemporary. But this art form that is actually a Black art form that was born out of the incredible fighting, creative, and beautiful spirit of Black people in this country against all odds, against oppression, racism. I mean, all, you know, that this is how tap dancing was born. You know, our drums, our method of communication was banned because we used to rise in rebellion. We would rise in rebellion across plantations just through rhythm, you know? And so, and they tried to silence us. And what did we do? We innovated. We said, oh, we don't have our instruments? You know what I mean? We created in our body. And I think that is like, it's what you do. Like, you turn oppression into joy and resistance and, you know, and entertainment. And that is our legacy. That is an incredible legacy of Black people. So my Black people, like, get on board with tap dancing. Stop using tap dancing as a metaphor for, oh, they're tap dancing. Oh, look at that person. He's tap dancing around the subject. Or tap dancing is an honorable, sophisticated, elegant expression of Black people. So like, I want the appreciation and the recognition to continue to grow in that regard. You know, I think if we get more people on board with that, then, you know, we'll fly together. You know, because then we're really like uplifting, you know, the culture in more ways than one, not just dance culture, but the culture of you know, of Black people here. Thank you so much for tuning in.